They can be stubborn, Embers said. John smiled and gave her a look as they walked around the barn. Yeah, not like elves and humans, right? Embers grinned. They're good in a fight, John said, and his tone implied this was all that mattered. They're natural commanders. Yes, I can imagine why, Embers said. Each sentence sounds like an order. They found the dwarf at the edge of the old quarry outside of town, cutting blocks of stone with a long copper saw. It normally took 2 people a quarter hour, but the dwarf sawed an entire block in 2 with a single stroke. The stones smoked as they fell, and the copper saw glowed with heat. John and Embers watched silently as the dwarf hefted another massive stone onto the cutting block. The dwarf spit into his hands and noticed the 2 out of the corner of his eye. He paused, walked over to grab his battle staff, with the hourglass symbol of Zarok, lawgiver, at the tip. He walked back to the stone and leaned his staff against a tree stump with an easy reach should he need to use it. He went back to work. Good morning, John said. The dwarf ignored them. I'm a friend of Morag the Wise Woman, John said. She said there was a high theocron of Zarok, lawgiver around here, working to earn his keep. The dwarf paused. High theocron, he said. A lofty title. Far too lofty for a job such as this. He went back to work, and a moment later, there were 2 more smoking blocks. He cleared them away. There's a job for 9... John hesitated. Rat catchers didn't seem appropriate. He went with his gut. Heroes, in Bedegar. A village looking for someone to stand against Lord Saxton. I have heard of this one, the dwarf said, seemingly uninterested. He hurled the smaller blocks into a pile and went to heft a new stone to cut. A foul tyrant. Well suited to these times. Perhaps the people deserve him. No people deserve tyranny, Embers said, an edge in her voice. The dwarf appeared to notice her for the first time, peered at her, took in her raiment, and went back to work. 9 against Saxton. The dwarf carried a massive block over his head to the cutting stone. He shook his head in disbelief at what was being asked. How great the opposition! John told him. The dwarf dropped the stone in astonishment and stared at the human and elf. Then he smiled. Ha! You know our traditions well, Sir Knight. You seek to grant me a glorious death, leading desperate soldiers against impossible odds. Not that desperate, John said modestly. Yes. The dwarf looked at Embers again. By garb and reputation, I make you a mist curls around dying embers, mistress of the Tower of Translation. You are no stranger to power, but your tower is fallen, lady, he said. Seek you revenge, or justice? I see no reason to choose, Embers said smoothly. In my case, as well as the case of these villagers, justice would be revenge. The dwarf's head snapped to look at Sir John. She speaks my language as well, it seems. You are of a kind, you 2. 3, John dared. The dwarf failed to stifle a smile. And what is your stake in this? John shrugged. I've already been paid, he said. He fished around in a pouch on his belt. Here, I'll split it with you, fair and square. John flicked a coin off his finger with his thumb. It spun and glinted as it arced across the space between them. The dwarf snatched it from the air, opened his palm, and stared at it. Something in his face changed, softened. He looked at the nearby town that had adopted him, peasants doing labor in the fields. He clenched his fist around the coin. A princely sum, he said, mostly to himself. You are Dazar, Embers dared. High Theocron in exile. Yours is the greatest dwarven church in all of Omen's land. Thousands look to you for spiritual guidance. The dwarf said nothing. He looked at the coin in his hand. You left your people, Embers said quietly.
My people left me,
Dazar barked.
When they embraced Ajax!
Embers just watched the dwarf. His rage subsided as quickly as it came.
I thought leaving might inspire my people to...
He looked at the nearby village.
It matters not. I could have not stayed in any event. I lack the stomach for tyranny.
Cal Calavar's new Thane is not an easy problem to solve, John said with sympathy. Saxton is. The dwarf looked up at Embers.
Her I know by reputation.
He turned to look at John. John bowed slightly. John, he said. Dazar looked at his armor, at the age and weather of it, and made an intuitive leap.
You served under the good king.
John pursed his lips. That was a long time ago. Dazar shook his head once.
Not to me.
He picked up his battle staff and stepped forward.
I knew him, you see. Omund was a fine king. The best we'll ever see in a life as long as mine.
No one spoke for a moment.
These people, Dazar said, these villagers, do they know what they ask?
John didn't answer.
Do they know that asking us for help, asking you,
Dazar looked Sir John up and down,
means starting something they must see through to the end? It means hardship, privation, death, buying a future for their children. You told them this?
John shook his head.
Well, why not?
Dazar demanded.
You of all people must understand.
Dazar, John said, and his measured voice was a quick counter to Dazar's protest. These people are already at their wits' end. Just surviving, putting food on the table, keeping their children warm, giving them hope. It's already more than should be asked of anyone. And then coming to us, swallowing their pride, asking us for aid. It's our job to understand the job for them. Then, quieter, John added, and to forgive them ahead of time for when they weaken and give in to fear. Dazar stared at the man, this knight of Tor, and looked at Embers quietly radiating pride in her friend. Dazar grunted. He opened a pouch on his chest armor and inserted the coin.
We must find a troubadour to tell the tale of Saxton's fall. I cannot wait to hear how it ends.
He walked between them, carrying his staff on his shoulder.
Come,
he barked.
There's a world needs mending. Why stand we here idle?
John was grinning madly at Embers. She held up 3 fingers.